A high-ranking police general in South Africa is now living under the constant shadow of death threats after exposing what he describes as a deeply entrenched criminal syndicate with reach into the highest corridors of power. This is the unfolding and highly dangerous story of Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, a senior police commander whose decision to speak out against alleged corruption has turned him into a marked man. His revelations, and the reaction they have provoked, have raised disturbing questions about the integrity of South Africa's justice system and whether the state is still able to protect those who challenge powerful criminal and political interests. At its core, this saga forces an uncomfortable question: if you were a senior officer who discovered that your superiors were colluding with criminals, would you risk your career and your life to expose them? Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi is not a minor figure within the security establishment. As the head of the provincial police force in KwaZulu-Natal, he commands law enforcement in one of South Africa's most violent and crime-ridden regions. KwaZulu-Natal has long been plagued by gang warfare, drug trafficking, contract killings, and politically motivated assassinations. In several areas, analysts have warned that the state's authority has effectively collapsed, replaced by criminal networks that operate with impunity and exert control over communities, resources, and even political outcomes. It was into this volatile environment that Mkhwanazi rose through the ranks, earning a reputation as a tough and disciplined officer during some of the most turbulent years in South Africa's post-apartheid history. When he assumed leadership in the province, many hoped he would be the figure capable of dismantling the criminal syndicates that had flourished there for decades. What Mkhwanazi claims to have uncovered, however, was far more alarming than ordinary organized crime operating on the streets. According to him, the syndicates were embedded within the very institutions meant to fight them. In early February 2024, he took an unprecedented and explosive step. At a public press conference, he directly accused his political superior, Police Minister Becky Cele, of being compromised by criminal interests. This was not a confidential report or a leaked document whispered to journalists behind closed doors. It was a senior police general standing before cameras and microphones, alleging that the country's top policing authority was interfering in investigations and maintaining contact with individuals linked to organized crime. Mkhwanazi claimed that communications existed between the minister and a controversial businessman, Vusimuzi Ket Matlola, suggesting interference in active investigations. He further stated that he had led a specialized task force focused on dismantling organized crime syndicates and investigating political assassinations, only for that unit to be abruptly disbanded. According to Mkhwanazi, this decision came from the highest levels and occurred at a critical moment, just as investigations were closing in on politically connected individuals accused of murder, extortion, and large-scale criminal activity. The timing, he implied, was no coincidence. The minister has denied the allegations and has threatened legal action against anyone spreading what he calls malicious and defamatory claims. As a senior member of the African National Congress and a former premier of KwaZulu-Natal, he has defended his record and insisted that proper processes be followed. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who appointed him with the stated aim of restoring discipline and integrity within the police service, has called for investigations but has stopped short of taking decisive action, a stance that has drawn criticism from opposition parties and civil society groups. Central to Mkhwanazi's claims is the figure of Matlola, a businessman whose name has repeatedly surfaced in some of South Africa's most controversial and murky scandals. According to Mkhwanazi, WhatsApp messages and other communications show senior police officials discussing personnel matters and operational details of ongoing investigations with individuals linked to criminal networks. If authentic, these communications raise serious concerns about the integrity of law enforcement and the extent to which business, politics, and crime may be intertwined at the highest levels. The danger facing Mkhwanazi is not theoretical. Following his public accusations, intelligence reports allegedly indicated that contracts had been placed on his life, detailing both payment arrangements and planned methods of assassination. In response, the South African Police Service escalated his security to the highest possible level. He now lives under constant armed protection, with specialized units assigned to guard him and his family. His movements are carefully managed to avoid predictability, and even routine public appearances are considered potential risks. Friends and colleagues describe a man living under intense surveillance, forced to remain constantly alert in order to stay alive. Despite this, Mkhwanazi has refused to retreat into silence. He maintains that the task force he led had begun to make real progress in tackling political violence, an issue that has become tragically normalized in parts of South Africa. His team allegedly linked seemingly unrelated murders to broader criminal conspiracies involving politicians, corrupt officials, and professional hitmen. Several high-profile cases were approaching prosecution, threatening to dismantle long-standing criminal empires built on fear, patronage, and bloodshed. The disbandment of the task force, he argues, effectively unraveled years of painstaking investigative work. Equipment was reassigned, personnel scattered, and sensitive case files handed over to units lacking the same expertise and institutional memory. The evidence Mkhwanazi refers to reportedly includes extensive electronic communications, phone records, and written correspondence pointing to systematic corruption. Screenshots allegedly reveal warnings of impending police raids, instructions on how to neutralize investigations, and discussions about protecting certain suspects. Experts who have examined similar patterns argue that the scale and consistency of such communications, if proven, would indicate not isolated misconduct but an organized and deeply rooted criminal enterprise operating within the police service itself. The risks of whistleblowing in South Africa are starkly illustrated by recent history. The murder of popular rapper Kiernan aka Forbes in February 2023 shocked the nation and initially appeared to be a high-profile celebrity killing. Subsequent investigations suggested links to professional hitmen also involved in political assassinations, reinforcing fears of a contract-killing industry serving powerful interests. Mkhwanazi's task force had reportedly been pursuing leads connected to such networks before its dissolution, raising questions about whether justice was deliberately derailed. Other names have surfaced in connection with alleged obstruction of justice, including senior police officials accused of warning suspects, halting imminent operations, or using their authority to shield criminal networks. One reported incident involved the last-minute cancellation of a major operation, allegedly allowing a suspect to flee just hours before arrest. Such actions, critics argue, undermine the rule of law and send a clear message that power and connections can override accountability. The assassination of Armand Shabe in December 2024 further underscored the lethal stakes involved. Shabe, a former police officer turned private investigator, had been probing organized crime and its links to senior political figures. He was ambushed and killed by professional hitmen in what many believe was a targeted execution rather than a random act of violence. Reports indicate that he was preparing to hand over critical evidence before his death, after which his offices were searched and computer files seized, an act widely interpreted as an attempt to intimidate others and erase sensitive information. The phenomenon of contract killings has become one of the most chilling aspects of South Africa's crime landscape. Figures like a former cop-turned hitman, known in underworld circles for carrying out assassinations for wealthy clients, illustrate how deeply corruption may have penetrated law enforcement. That such individuals could operate for years suggests either catastrophic institutional failure or active protection from within the system. Mkhwanazi's unit was reportedly closing in on some of these networks before being dismantled. Amid this bleak picture, the Moorane Commission of Inquiry into Political Killings in KwaZulu-Natal has emerged as a rare source of hope. Chaired by respected jurists, the commission has heard testimony from witnesses, politicians, hitmen, and families of victims, painting a picture of a province where murder, corruption, and political competition are dangerously intertwined. Despite intimidation, threats, and the ever-present risk of violence, the Commission continues its work, slowly assembling a body of evidence that could expose the depth of criminal infiltration within the state. President Ramaphosa now faces a profound political dilemma. His public commitment to fighting corruption appears to place him on the side of figures like Mkhwanazi, yet the allegations implicate senior officials within his own administration. Critics argue that his cautious language and calls for investigations fall short of the decisive action required, while supporters insist on due process. Parliament remains deeply divided, with opposition parties demanding suspensions and stronger protections for whistleblowers, and elements within the ruling party framing the accusations as politically motivated attacks. The implications extend beyond individual careers and political rivalries. Strategic assets such as the Port of Durban, a vital trade hub, have been repeatedly linked to drug trafficking and organized crime facilitated by bribery and corrupt officials. If such infrastructure remains compromised, the consequences for economic stability, regional security, and international confidence are severe. Foreign investors, intelligence partners, and neighboring states are watching closely, aware that South Africa's stability has ripple effects far beyond its borders. If Mkhwanazi is silenced, whether through assassination, intimidation, or forced retreat, the message to other potential whistleblowers would be devastating. Exposing corruption would be seen not as a path to justice but as a death sentence. Criminals would be emboldened by the belief that political connections guarantee immunity, while public trust in institutions would erode even further. Skilled professionals might avoid careers in law enforcement, and the cycle of violence and corruption would accelerate, pushing the country closer to a crisis in which the state no longer holds a monopoly on legitimate force. For now, Mkhwanazi remains alive, guarded, and defiant. His allegations are under scrutiny, commissions continue their slow and dangerous work, and South Africa stands at a crossroads. This is no longer merely a dispute between a police general and a cabinet minister. It is a test of whether the country can reclaim its institutions from criminal capture or whether corruption and violence will continue to shape its future. How this moment is handled may well define South Africa's trajectory for generations to come, making Mkhwanazi's survival and the pursuit of truth not just personal matters, but national imperatives.